Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Hello. Welcome. I'm trying to think of something scary, and I didn't really prepare, so I'm like, maybe I'll run with scissors. Oh, I got scissors. That's scary. Oh, Halloween episode, scary scissors. Oh, hey, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. And all of my pencils just fell. That's what I get for not preparing. Welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan. You know, it actually could have been worse with you running with scissors. Knocking over pencils is...
Yeah. I guess...
pretty level one consequence of that act of recklessness on your part.
Yeah. And frankly, that area of my desk probably should have been cleaned a long time ago. Anyway, now I have motivation to do so. Welcome. We are so happy to have you here. It is old school, just Ryan and I, because it is the big, giant Halloween rundown.
List
Ryan,
of terror, you called it last year.
Yes, the list of terror.
I think that's pretty good, and we're going to go with that from now on.
I love it. The 2022 list of terror. And what that means, if you don't remember from last year, Ryan secludes himself in his home, in his living room, shuts off all the lights, and he subjects himself to watching horror movie, scary movie, Halloween themed movie, creepy movie. He subjects himself to all of it, everything that is out. And what's perfect is when this podcast comes out, you still have Halloween day and night. You can, once the trick-or-treaters are on, you can
change. We're getting it out, before the holiday, although just before. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Once the hundreds of thousands of listeners come in, I promise I'll watch Halloween movies in September so that you can get this show a month in advance instead of a day in advance. Right. But like always, we've done some version of this every year since we've been on, which is 5 years now, almost to the day. And you can go back and listen to last year's to get suggestions for this year, stuff like that. I think that's, for the time being, that might be how it has to work. Or, play this on your commute, on Halloween day. It might be fun to listen to. We'll see. And I guess because we can't have any time because this list is massive. I promised a shorter list a few weeks ago. I completely betrayed that promise to you and to Joel. Because I just, I set aside the time. Wasn't so much the movies, but the time, and I just kept watching. Whenever I had free time, I started another one. And as you guys know, that's the world now. It's so easy. We've tried to include all the streaming services that these are available on. When you hear my pay service of preference is Vudu, so when you hear Vudu, these still cost money, probably. And there's a good chance I didn't quite get this right, or that I got my streaming info outdated and this stuff isn't on these services, some of these anymore, but we did the best we could. Some of them are exclusive to them, your Netflixes and Paramounts and Shudder Entertainment, like those really are pretty solid and reliable. So, and then I guess there's a third thing, Joel. Like I say every year, this is a recommendation show, so it's not so, although I'm happy to give my opinion for however long it takes to get through all these, but it's not, and I think it's valid, or we wouldn't be beaming it out into the world at risk to our reputations and egos. But this is a recommendation show, so my goal here is to provide clarity, to set these apart from one another in ways that that'll stick in your head if they're things that sound good to you. And if I can recommend the quality, then great. But the bigger thing is, what kind of horror movie do you like? Almost every kind is here. I even got a slasher in for a change, which I normally don't have on my list. So listen to it with that ear. Future Halloweens, or if you want to cram Halloween night, that's what these list of terrors are about. They're same kind of as our end of the year episodes, our year in review episodes. It's like, you got to make up your own minds about this stuff, of course, that goes without saying, but I really am trying to help you do that, not just pontificate or entirely for my own benefit.
Right. And another change for this year is I have actually seen 3 of these.
Woo!
I know. I don't like scary movies. I don't like it, and especially with the current trend of the last 5, 6, 7 years of really creepy kids. Nope, that ain't my jam. And speaking of,
that's creepy.
Yeah, that is creepy. I pretty much don't like horror movies either. I mean, we talked about it on the show. It's not that I don't like them. I like them fine. But I consider comedies and horror films like really, really bad cinematic bets. The proportion of garbage to good ones is completely out of whack in those genres, in my opinion. So sure. I try and pick them as carefully as I can. There's all kinds of major event films out there, the Scream remake / sequel / prequel / reboot that won't be talked about. Halloween's, these last of the Halloween movies, if you believe that for a second.
Last of the Halloween movies. Yeah.
That's just, thanks. That's not really my deal. So these are going to be a little more off the beaten path with a couple of, I got a couple of big ones in there.
Sure. We'll great. See. All right. Well, let's jump right into it. This is the 2022 List of Terror.
Yikes.
There you go.
All right.
She's not ready for the List of Terror. All right, so let's.
As always, we've broken these down into nice, digestible categories for you.
Yep, and I wish I had like the
which I think are funny.
Look who's back again, because that is our first subject heading is look who's back, and and we're going to start off with 2021's Netflix film Army of Thieves.
Not really a horror movie of any kind. It's a prequel to Army of the Dead, which it's kind of nice to start with Army of Thieves because we ended the last show last year with Army of the Dead, which I didn't like, but I really did try and sort of defend what was good about it. Zack Snyder's massive 2.5 hour zombie heist flick with which was both a zombie movie and a horror movie and an action movie and a crime movie. And it also fell into that category, which we love the most, the Bautista category. This is absent Bautista. You're going to have to remind, I know this is a ton of movies made, but you're going to have to remind me who the director and star of this movie is. He was one of the more memorable parts of Army of the Dead.
Directed by Matthias Schweinhofer.
Guess what country he's from.
Yeah, and he also stars.
It's a prequel about his character and about a crime that Natalie Emmanuel's in this, right? She's going to come
Natalie
up
Emmanuel's in it. Yep, love her.
So it's a prequel, and it's just a heist movie. Really, he's really good. He's a safe cracker, and is his sort of heist expert. And I was stunned by it. And, I didn't love it, but how much I liked it more than Army of the Dead. This film had, it had warmth to it that movie didn't have. These characters connected with each other in ways that movie didn't attempt to do. It's just, and there's just something about him. He's even in Army of the Dead, he's this sort of, he's frightened all the time, but he's this cuddly guy that you like and root for, and him being at the heart of the story and it being sort of an origin story. He has zombie nightmares about the impending zombie apocalypse throughout the film, but other than that, there's no real horror element to this. It's an old-fashioned Euro heist movie with sneaking around and breaking into stuff, and the whole practicing it before you do it, and then the car chases and the betrayals and all the double crosses and everything that comes after. It was fun in that way, and Natalie and Matthias were just really, really great, and his direction was really visually assured, and it had a lot of that. It still had a lot of that slick Zack and Deborah Snyder sort of trademark, I don't know what you call it, over productionness, or it still had that in ways that you can see how these go together. But
I sort of feel like we can just call it Snyderness. It's got Snyderness to it.
It does have some Snyderness to it,
and people will know what that means. Yeah,
but the biggest flaws of Army of the Dead, the bloatedness, the kind of stupidity and the darkness of humanity is not really present here in this. And that's a real common theme. I don't know if I picked these out, but it's a real common theme throughout these films, that something's different about you and society doesn't know what to do with you. It doesn't, like, it can be hard on people. Right. It's hard on all of us. I think all of our differences, frankly, even if we conform pretty well out in the world, I think our differences make it tough. They alienate us from each other more than they unite us, unfortunately. And these films, starting with this one, there's plenty of them that have that theme of, what makes you different makes you special. And if you can find the people, even if they're criminals, even if they're doomed because the zombie apocalypse is upon us, if you can find those connections, that's something meaningful and all that. And so I enjoyed it. It's on Netflix, and certainly if you saw Army of the Dead and somehow like that was your thing, then you have to see this. But even if it wasn't, I don't think you need to see Army of the Dead actually at all to even watch this one. So if it sounds good, you're not, it's a prequel. And we always recommend, I can't think of any movies in history where I don't say watch them in release order. There's a series that came out this year that really demonstrates that, I think, thoroughly. That's way, way later here in our show, but always release order. But, sometimes the prequel is its own thing enough that you can just skip the big thing that preceded it. And this is a case where that's okay to do that.
Very, very cool. All right. Next up is we're going to go with our first appearance of
that creepy kid with the lisp.
There we go. We're going to do Firestarter 2022 on Amazon.
Oof.
Going from I surprisingly like this to oof.
Well, I shouldn't have watched Firestarter. I know better. Nobody liked it. There's no good reviews of it. Even the audiences hated it. So I don't know what drew me to it. I suppose it was easy. It was its availability.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain. The writer is not a popular guy in movie circles. I don't know. He's written some other things that make them mad.
Scott Teems.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more him than the direction or the performances or anything that were really, really slammed in this film hard. He made a bunch of changes to the original script, some of which I thought were clever. At this point, if you're going to do Firestarter again, I mean, it's okay to do your own thing a little bit, do something a little different here and there. I mean, I didn't mind that so much. Some really grisly deaths by fire, as you expect.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's on the menu, but that was pretty well done, but it wasn't. It's kind of funny. We talked about Firestarter. We've talked about it off and on throughout the years because it's 1984. It was the summer of our youth, truly the summer of our youth. that 84 summer, not the best summer, but the kind of quintessential one. If you grew up in the 80s, I would say the Ghostbusters summer. And this was part of that. And so it's kind of, that Firestarter film, even though it's not really super well made, it gets under your skin and it sort of follows you through life. And and the things that are great about it, you remember and you appreciate, I think, a little bit more because you were there when it happened, sort of thing. This can't live up to that. The big criticisms were, well, it's not really well directed. It's got this really weird tonal shifts and stuff. And Drew Barrymore, who's awesome in it, is too young to be as good of an actor as she is. And it makes her whole performance come out as sort of moment to moment and artificial, frankly. And it's not a knock on her. It's actually a backsided compliment. I've always said that. Just because Drew is weird in it and annoys me doesn't mean she's doing a bad job. She's grown beyond just being a kid in a movie like she was in E.T. She's actually making actor choices. She's not really able to make those come from any sort of place of truth. She's not able to do the internal part of it. And because of that, it's just a very showy, silly performance. And then add just over the top stuff from Freddie Jones and David Keith and George C. Scott, and the list goes on and on and on. And it makes it crazy. So why am I talking about the 1984 Firestarter? Because I think what makes it memorable is what's wonderful about it. The score, the effects, the gonzo ending of the thing. It's just, it's just like, you just kind of can't believe what you're seeing. That makes an impression and leaves an impression that follows you through time. This shows you what a dark, tonally consistent Firestarter would be like. And it would be boring. And instead of having a sweet kid who sometimes sets people on fire, you just have this dark, gloomy, almost evil from the start kid who just goes super evil by the time it's over. And that's not fun to watch.
Right.
Joel. That's creepy. That's just creepy.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
that's creepy.
So I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't think it was altogether awful. But I did think for what they're trying to sell, it was pretty bad. And I don't think there's a way into it.
Sure.
For anyone, really. Because it's not violent or rated R enough to please gore hounds or, I think if you're scared of fire, this will creep you out a little bit. But the kid isn't a bad actor, but if you're scared of fire, watch Backdraft.
That creepy kid with the lisp.
Yeah. Oh wait, hold on.
That's creepy.
Where's my?
That's creepy.
Not okay, creepy kid.
There's my creepy kid. Creepy kid.
All right,
well,
creepy kid, and the sense of hope at the end of this movie that the movie tries to give. It's just like. No.
Well, speaking of,
not okay, creepy kid.
The end of Firestarter, it's stupid. They go into the New York Times at the end. Art Carney and Drew Barrymore hand in hand, and you're like, they're going to change the world and the bad guys are going to pay. And that's probably not what's going to happen, but it leaves you in that place. This movie tries to leave you in this, hey, maybe, I don't know. Maybe these two mass murderers will find their way back to the light somehow, or maybe they'll just make the whole world end in a big ball of flame. It's tough to say.
All right. Let's move on to our next creepy kid. Yep, not okay, creepy kid, and that's Orphan First Kill.
Woo! Have you ever seen Orphan?
I have not seen Orphan.
Orphan is an extraordinary Dark Castle film from I don't know how many years ago now. 13 years ago, 2008, 2007, something like that. And I'm going to spoil Orphan, which is great. If you're going to watch Orphan and Orphan First Kill, you should watch them both, and you definitely should watch, even though Orphan First Kill is a prequel. Again, you should watch them in release order. Orphan was I don't want to say it was a riot, but this couple played in Orphan. Sorry, I got to do Orphan first, but this couple played by Vera Farmiga and Peter Skarsgård adopt a Russian orphan from the orphanage because she's like kind of creative, and they get excited about her, and it turns out or the orphan's name is Esther. And Esther is one of the great screen monsters of all time. She just is evil to the core, and that slowly reveals itself, and it takes this family down and causes all kinds of death and mayhem. And the trick with Esther, and this is where because that part probably you can get just from looking at the poster. But the reveal for Esther, and this is what do you say, 10-second mute starting now.
Go. Yep.
Is that she's a grown woman who has a hormone imbalance that makes her only appear like a kid, and she's completely psychotic in every way imaginable. Tick tock, tick tock. And now we're back to the end of the spoiler. Esther is played back then by Isabelle Fuhrman in a performance that just takes your breath away. It's an amazing performance. Isabelle is an incredible actor. We're going to talk about her later this year. She starred in a film this year called Novice, which is just amazing. That's more of an end of the year type show than this show. She played Esther when she was 12 years old, which, given the film's conceit, was an amazing thing because that was the only really way to do the story they were trying to tell. She also, if for you guys who don't watch the weird stuff I watch, Novice, blah, 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 she was very memorable in the first Hunger Games movie as Clove from District 2 in a very tiny amount of screen time. You can track her through that film, and it's every time they cut to her, she gives you something that just sums the moment up perfectly. I'm a great admirer of that. And now she's 25 years old. She's not 12 anymore. And she's playing in a prequel to Orphan, and with body doubles and stuff, and just her sort of her face acting. They get the point. And this time it's another couple, very much like the last time. This is her impersonating a missing child. So it's diabolical in a way. But this film had twists and turns that I didn't see coming. It's bloody and violent, and it's nasty in a way, but in this way that you're just like, whoa, wow. Like that's the reaction you have when you're watching it, as opposed to, ew, which is not something I like to go through for over 2 hours.
Yeah.
Julia Stiles in particular, she's always been really good. And she's slumming a bit in this, and yet she's given it her all, and that's what's making it work. Her and Isabel's chemistry is just off the hook good. So it's fun. It's one of those fun, psycho movies where are we going to escape the psycho? And because it's a prequel, it's sadly you kind of know the answer to that, and yet you still are. It still delivers the surprises and stuff. Who directed this? He directed 3 movies on this year's list.
This one is
something Hunt.
Oh my gosh, where I went away from it because I was getting ready for the next movie.
Sorry.
It is William Brent Bell.
William Brent Bell. Well, he does it right. He shoots the cars driving through the snow and all the ancillary stuff that fill out these stories. Like he lights everything good. He's got a old school mystery suspense soul to him. The horror comes, but it's all about the suspense, so it's very Hitchcockian in that sense. And Orphan Frisk Kill, it sounds pretty corny, and it is, and it's still fun. So good job.
All right, next up
on Paramount, right?
On Paramount Plus. Yes, on Paramount Plus. Also on Paramount Plus is our next film, and it is the return of Christina Ricci.
This is a different category, though. What's this
different category? Yep, and this category is called Something's Missing. Indeed. So first up is on Paramount Plus. It is Monstrous
with Christina Ricci, as you said. What's the setup for this?
The story centers on a traumatized woman fleeing her abusive ex-husband with her 7-year-old son. In their new remote sanctuary, they find they have a bigger, more terrifying monster to deal with.
That sounds pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
Christina's sort of standing in a bog or a swamp on the poster, looking at the camera. And the the fun thing about this from a art direction and from a why am I watching this story again is that it takes place in the late 50s, which has a lot of sort of fun design aspects to it that are a little different than normal. And Christina Ricci is fantastic. Still, that's not a surprise. But these three films, which are all basically the same story, one way or another, this was the worst one.
Okay.
I guess it depends on your. This was the least bloody and sort of most psychological, but to me, this was the worst one. And to say too much more about it would ruin it. So there, I kept that one
Here's
short.
The thing,
Monstrous.
just having the trailer play in the background here, it looks pretty gorgeous.
It has
like
a really good
really
look.
well.
Yeah, it has a really, really good look to it. And Christina's really good in it. I wanted to like it more. And that's pretty much the story of this film. If you read the critical reaction, it's nice effort, but not really. You didn't really get there, and you didn't do anything new, and there are no real surprises. The twists, such as they are like you kind of like, so in a way they earn those because they provide the evidence for them nicely, and all these films are kind of one version of that or not. This is the most PG-13 of the three.
Okay. Well, now we're going to go to our first
and
Shudder
Christina Ricci
film.
fans. I mean, she gives it her all. She's great in it. It's fun to see her carrying a film again. I assume we're going to see that more and more now. She didn't just come back to do Monstrous. She's back with us, and hopefully there are better movies in her future though than Monstrous.
All right. So the network dedicated to scary movies, Shudder, makes its first appearance in the Something's Missing category with The Twin. Twins are creepy anyway, but let's go ahead and
make
a movie about them. Yeah.
One twin, mercifully, in this film dies off screen before the movie even starts. The husband sort of moves back to the land of his origins. I can't remember where they're moving, somewhere in Eastern Europe, I want to say.
Let me see if it doesn't say in the setup here, but let me see. Scandinavian countryside. It looks probably like Sweden.
Yeah, okay. So
Finland.
Oh, Finland.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure Finland's not technically Scandinavia, IMDb, but close enough for our purposes. Geographically and sort of language and such. Anyway, it's a great on location shot in Finland film that looks kind of awesome. Who's our leading lady in this movie? It's really
our leading lady is Teresa Palmer.
She's a pretty decent actor who sadly I've never really seen in anything great yet. And I've seen her in 17 movies or something. So at some point you have to be really great in something really great, or you're just one of those people who, oh yeah, I remember her.
Yeah, I mean, I like her in Discovery of Witches.
Okay, but that to me, that's not gonna do it.
It's not a great show, but
right, she's good in it though, right? She's a good actor. She's good in this too, but this also doesn't sort of rise to the level of knocking your socks off. A couple who are grieving, they need a fresh start, but she's an American girl being brought to this Finnish countryside, and you can tell she's okay, we have to do something, but you can tell she's kind of just not into it, and it is a little nervous about it. And it turns out as things start to unfold that she's got reason to be nervous. The locals are a little strange. The old lady who lives down the lane has some
always creepy.
She has some very dark portents and predictions of the future that need to be adhered to and listened to.
Creepy.
It is creepy, and it's got a lot of mood in it, and it's got a sort of dreamlike quality that I admired, but also where this one goes and where it ends up and the paces that you go through are very, very familiar, and there just isn't anything special enough about it. So I'd say if you're a big Teresa Palmer fan, which I don't know that there is such a thing, but if you are, I mean, she's really good in it. truly. And she typically really does rise to the occasion and takes the material seriously. It's really important that be done this way. If you're interested in Finland and some sort of neat Finland, like, I don't want to say, we call them urban legends, but there's nothing urban about this movie.
Right.
Rural legends, maybe, from Finland. It's got some of that. It's I can't remember who plays the old woman, but she's always been good and is fantastic in this. And the kid's pretty good too, although what's going on with that kid?
Yeah.
But that's part of the fun, but it's kind of like,
yeah.
And I got through that one without spoiling anything. Ugh, these are hard. Something's missing are really about the reveals. And if I'm being critical of them, it's because the reveals came, and if I hated them, I would tell you not to waste your time. I don't want to tell you that with all three of these, but it, you got to be into that sort of thing. And if you're someone who always figures out the twist, I can't imagine you're being patient with any of these three films.
Okay, well, next up is speaking of people who are back, we had Christina Ricci back. Now we have Naomi Watts headlining a movie again. We haven't seen.
Well, she never really went away.
Well, she never really went away, but like anchoring a movie. For a while there, she was. I think
she was just anchoring movies you weren't watching. I wasn't really watching many of them.
There you go. Fair. That's totally fair.
Well, she's about our age, right? She's in her late 40s now. So Hollywood doesn't have the same use for her as they used to when she was a legit star in A-list material. But this isn't like a comeback movie.
Right.
And frankly, even though she's the name above the title, she's not the star of the show here either. The star of the show again is these two kids, the two brothers. And I'll let you read the summation so that.
Yeah. This is Goodnight Mommy.
It's a remake of an Austrian movie that's really good. If you don't mind subtitles and you trip over Goodnight Mommy from Austria, that's not on either show, but that's a really, really creepy movie, Joel. Really creepy.
There you go. Okay. Well, twin brothers arrive at their mother's house and begin to suspect that something isn't right. There's something ain't right with Mommy.
They haven't seen their mom for a long time. It's so from the kid's point of view, this movie, that it and the Austrian one was the same, but something about those German speaking kids and something about Europe and not just some random farm. It's not really explained while they're on a farm, or maybe it is and I missed it. It's possible. I watched a lot of these. It's not really explained who Mom is. She's famous. People recognize her out in the world, even though she's had cosmetic surgery, which is a big conceit of the thing. They live on a farm, which I don't know why. The kids haven't seen her for ages. I'm not clear on why that's the case either. And all of that is because we really only get information from the kids' point of view, and the kids and this is maybe to the movie's credit, because you don't need answers to all this stuff, truly. It's the given circumstances of the story. But it's just unusual. It was unusual for me to watch a movie where you think the reasons for stuff are coming and they never do come. You just have to take all that for what it is. And part of that's because it's from the kids' point of view, and the kids don't provide us any exposition. Because they wouldn't, because they know all the reasons for everything. Maybe that's, it puts you a little on edge, like you really don't know what's going on. It's a little confusing. I think without spoiling the movie, because of her behavior and because of the plastic surgery and because of this sort of mountain of weird stuff, one of these brothers staying with their mom for the first time in ages starts to believe that it's not really their mom.
Right.
And that's where the conflict comes in. It's that investigation and that tug and pull between the immature kids who are frightened and a maternal character who seems to have the opposite of any good maternal instincts. Even though we're shown pretty clearly in flashback that she was a pretty sweet mom. So their suspicions are warranted.
Yeah.
What's missing? What's happening here? You'll have to watch it to find out. I'm not going to.
All right.
The Austrian one's really good. It's too bad that, I guess here it is. Here's its appearance. That movie you should see. These 3 films, you're probably, your life will probably be okay without them.
You'll make do. All right. Well,
unless you're a Naomi Watts super fan, I am. There are reasons to come to these. None of them are like, oh, you'll never get that 92 minutes back. I mean, I don't feel that way about things anyway. I didn't feel that way about any of these, but none of them knocked my socks off. So.
Right. All right. Next up is we're gonna go to a new category, and lower class England is scary. Yeah.
Lower class England is scary. It is. Right. The apartments are really small. The houses, like, it seems like the houses for miles and miles all look exactly identical. Think of like Harry Potter's neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Both of these films capture that emptiness really, really well. I don't know how to explain it any better than that.
Yeah.
The first one is called
His House.
His House, and read us the setup of that, please.
So a refugee couple makes a harrowing escape from war-torn South Sudan, but then they struggle to adjust to their new life in an English town that has an evil lurking beneath the surface.
Really jump scary movie, His House, but because it has this cultural thematic heft to it, and it really does. The 2 lead actors are kind of extraordinary, and they come from a very African place. The religion, the philosophy, the way they interact with the world, the way their the male and female sexual roles are sort of laid out from them from birth for generations in a way that in England it's much messier now, like it is here. So that African refugees, and they've been through hell,
right?
Not just where they were in Sudan, but the escape was harrowing and awful, and you get to kind of experience that whole thing in pieces throughout the film. But they show up to this house, and it's great. Matt Smith plays the government guy who introduces them to the house, and it's great that in that scene where he's, oh, you're lucky, you get this whole one to yourself or whatever, where he really feels like the ferryman, like leading them to the underworld. Like, it has that whole sense to it. And then I think, without spoiling it, the fact that it turns out not to be that at all is a fantastic twist. And Matt is obviously, if you're watching House of Dragon right now, or you remember him from The Crown, or you remember the Doctor Who days, I mean, Matt Smith is aces. He's every time, he's barely in this, but every time he's in it, it's important. There's this great scene where, due to supernatural or psychological goings on, one of the refugees has torn out holes in the walls, and it's just made a mess of the whole place. Running from something and searching for something. Mm-hmm. I won't tell you the details. And it's Smith and this other guy who are standing there, and they're like, he's a refugee and he's been accepted into England, but he's on a citizenship path, and this sort of thing isn't helping. Sure. And he does this speech, and it's, again, this is where this movie really works, and this is why it got the really good reviews, because the societal stuff that's in this is really fantastic, and the horror stuff is pretty stupid. It's very James Wan. Boo.
Yeah.
I didn't really get into it or get too scared by it. I maybe jumped a little when it got loud, but it didn't earn any of that. What it did earn was this moment where he's like, no, I'm one of the good ones. I'm one of the good ones. And he's using this awful, like, white people vernacular to sell himself as, please give me another chance. He says that it was roaches or rats or something, like he's trying to make some sort of excuse for this happening. And you can see Smith, when he hears that, he slowly softens to it. And then the woman that he escapes with comes in the room, and she's like, no, it is a spirit. And she just ruins everything. because she's telling the truth. I mean, that's the weirdness of the story. It's on Netflix. It's pretty clever. I have to say, I looking back on it, I don't love it. I don't think I really want to go back and watch it again even.
Right,
but there were things in here that absolutely made it worth my time. And if you're somebody who watches a lot of horror movies, this one has a different sort of spin and a different take than you're used to. And I, even though I don't think the reveals in this one, the film doesn't hinge on them the way they do on the Creepy Kid movies, for example, but they're surprising. They're not what you think. They're just not what you're used to, and I admired that too, even though they don't pay off like the standard horror twists typically do. So they're unsatisfying, and the film is dark and sadder in a way because of that. But there's some honesty and some truth there, and some difficult things that they're exploring through this. And there's several movies that try the same thing to make some sort of statement about the world or about refugees or about the place of minorities in English society. This one does a better job than most, I will say, at that.
Don't give him a creepy house.
Get out.
Right. All right. Next up is The Kindred, which you can watch on Tubi.
Nice. I believe it's our only Tubi exclusive.
Might be the
on
only.
this list.
Yeah. This is a Tubi.
Maybe
exclusive.
not. Maybe there's another Tubi. But I remember going, wow, nobody's playing this. Oh, Tubi's got it. And actually, that's usually what you see when you go, because Tubi's not at the top of the list.
That should be their slogan. Is Tubi got it? Nobody else got it. Tubi got it.
Tubi got it. Got Tubi? ? Aaron, we just did your marketing for you. Done. The answer to that is no, by the way.
A woman suffering from amnesia pieces together the events that led to her father's suicide, only to be haunted by the ghosts of children that she begins to suspect were murdered by him. Oh boy.
Not okay, creepy kid.
Right.
Haunted by the ghost of children she begins to suspect were murdered by him.
There you go. That's going to do it.
She comes out of a coma. This movie starts with her coming out of a coma and her husband explaining to her that how long she's been asleep and that her child is now walking and talking. So it's really about her getting back into her life in that way. And these other things at first are incidental. That part of the story is really, really pretty compelling, actually. And that's it's good setup because it makes you care more, I think, about the stuff that come at the end than you would otherwise. James Cosmo plays a old friend of the family from back of the old neighborhood where these murders may or may not have happened. And he's fantastic. And who's the woman who stars in this? I guess she's not super famous.
Samantha Bond.
Well, is that right?
Yeah, isn't it? That's who's top billed here, Samantha Bond.
Yeah, but I think maybe that's in order of appearance movies.
Sorry, IMDb.
Samantha Bond played Moneypenny in the Pierce Brosnan Bond films.
Yeah, come on, man. What are you doing to me here? Is it Kirstie Dillon?
No,
April Pearson. Yeah, it's got to be April Pearson.
Yeah, that sounds right, actually.
Jeez, sorry, IMDb.
April,
let's make it easy for me. Dumb IMDb. This is why.
Well, IMDb. Just a little sidetrack. IMDb used to do it in credits order, pre-credits or post-credits. When you see the names go by in order, that's what we call billing, and that's important. Yeah. Now it just, I think, because there's just so many movies, it just doesn't bother with that. It just does the scroll in the order in which it appears in the film, and the scroll is very often has nothing to do with billing these days. It's in order of appearance or it's in alphabetical order. It's almost never billing related. So they used to start with billing and then break into the scroll wherever it started, where they hadn't named somebody yet. And that takes effort, and they don't do that anymore. So finding April's name is a bit of a challenge.
That's our one tangent that we can take in this episode. We got too many movies here.
Yeah, it's true. But
all right,
this seemed like a good time to explain that to folks.
Yeah, no, that's our
and we don't need to really talk about this anymore. This movie's pretty grisly. This idea of the child killer, there's so many child killers on this list. This one really earns the darkness of that, and her, you just know you shouldn't be concentrate on your own kid. Keep your marriage together. Get back to the land of the living. They lost their home. They live in this tiny little apartment, and it really feels tiny. In the sticks, basically. And right. But it's not all, you're in a bad neighborhood. They have a neighbor who's helpful and nice to them, and so that it's a mixed bag, and it's a nuanced film, which I appreciate. But you're just like, lady, don't dig into that. But obviously, it's her dad. She's obsessed with it. She was there for the suicide. She has to know. And the more she looks into it, the more these things haunt her. We've seen that before. I didn't love it. It's all shot on video. Both of these films are very England, BBC Channel 6 television video style, which I always think makes shit look cheap. But it also can kind of make it look real in a way. And these are down to earth, gritty films, and this one was not half bad. If this premise, and if experiencing some different sort of actors you're not used to seeing before is exciting to you. I mean, these guys were really, really good for a bunch of people who are really just on, UK TV shows and stuff. I thought it was nicely done. Obviously, Samantha Bond, you might recognize. Cosmo, you almost certainly will know him. But our leads, our stars are it was fun to be watching them for the first time and do a pretty good job.
All right, next category is called Nature Doesn't Want You Here. And when I hear nature in horror movie, I immediately, of course, think of tentacles. But fear not, Tentacoli is not in this.
This don't take place in Italy. They all take place in the woods.
Yep.
Don't go out in the woods.
So we have just don't. All right, so we have the first movie is called Hunter Hunter. Right.
Hunter. It's hard, the 70s. We look back on horror films from the 70s with so fondly for a lot of different reasons, but a big one is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Alien. You list the whole bunch of them. We're able to absolutely push boundaries in ways that were just amazing and are still memorable and impressionable. And it's really, really hard when there's a jillion horror movies, and there's been a jillion forever, and there's really no censorship, even on television when it comes to violence, let alone in the cinema. Stuff doesn't have to be rated anymore because these films don't really care if they come out on big releases. Almost none of these got big releases.
Right.
TV, the streaming services don't really care. They just slap TVMA on it, and they're like, I don't know, your kid's going to watch it or not. It's up to you. So when a movie comes along, Hunter, things happening in the woods. This is a family unit that has decided to live off the fat of the land, truly hunt for their own meat, sleep in the furs of the things that they've killed, and do all that. And the point of conflict between them is that they're the wife who chose this way of life because she could do it, and because of love, feels like her child deserves to also have a choice, and feels like what's happening here with her daughter is that she's being born into this. She's not know anything else. And that's where this relationship is sort of on the skids. But of course, those sorts of problems are nothing compared to the things that are happening in the woods, which I won't describe to you, but they are almost 100% forensic. You don't see many killings or anything in this film until you do. And the forensic horror is just terrifying. What is going on? When you look at something weird and you're like, how did this even happen? And your imagination starts running, and that's more powerful than any sort of mass CG kill spree like the kind they had in Malignant or like the kind they had in Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
one of three of 15 or whatever the hell movies we were talking. People, that's the new thing is horror hounds love these mass fake slaughters of a bunch of people. Invisible Man had it kind of a little bit different there, but this film has nothing like that. But when you get to the end of it, it pushed boundaries that I just didn't think you could push anymore. It really did something different. That is horrific and will make you feel filthy and awful and need to take a shower immediately. And that's the kind of movie it is. But it's pretty well rated because it's really well done. The atmosphere, the dread that hangs over the thing, and the very simple explanation for it all is enough to drive you mad. And that's kind of what happens in it. So
there you go. Yeah.
Hunter x Hunter was, I mean, like I said, I don't know if that's your thing. If you think you can put up with that, this is your film. And I do. I'm looking for that. Go for it. You know what I mean? You want to have horror stamped on you? Horrify me. I dare you to do it. Like I get pretty cocky. And here I am several movies into this and I'm like, no biggie. This movie just rips your guts out. Literally and figuratively.
Wow. Initially, this next movie I thought was in the horror category because of Jesse Plemons' mustache. But it is actually no, I love Jesse Plemons.
Me too.
This is 2021 on HBO, Antlers. Almost watched this last night, but then you gave me a different recommendation, and but so I went with Antlers, or this is Antlers, I should say.
Just my one man's opinion, but I think I did right by you by steering away from
you certainly did. We'll get to it. Yeah.
Although I didn't mind Antlers, Jesse Plemons, woman,
Kerry Russell.
Thank you, Kerry Russell, and Graham Greene. Right.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want? What else do you want? It's about a Native American legend. It's a Wendigo film. It's a monster film where the Wendigo is the monster. We've seen that done many, many times up till now. So Wendigo is not very novel anymore. But the monster itself, from a practical effects and makeup standpoint, and just there's never been a monster quite like this before, standpoint, is really, really excellent. Scott Cooper made Hostels and Out of the Furnace, and a couple other very famous movies. Black Mass. He's never made a horror movie before, so he was, and I appreciate this, he was very concerned with the form of the thing. He's like a Soderbergh like filmmaker, and this is his horror movie. I don't think he's never gonna go back and do something like this again, would be my guess. Right. I'm wrong about that, but this is his horror movie. Someday we'll see his space movie, and we'll see his, we've seen his crime movie, and you get what I'm saying. Yeah. And I like that. I like an examination of the form. I love Kerry Russell as a haunted, trying to put her life back together school teacher, and Plemons as her brother, who's also a cop, who's tied up in this investigation of these weird goings on. And I loved their quiet scenes together. Just, again, I like the family drama, and maybe it's not Antlers' fault. Maybe it's my fault, but this movie, somewhere halfway through it, I just really wanted it to be over,
Yeah.
That sucks because I watched this in a place of honor because of who was involved in it. I really liked Hostels. I like the filmmaker Guillermo del Toro Presents. I don't like all the Guillermo del Toro Presents movies necessarily, but you getting there's a trust with that,
right?
That you're getting something that's going to be moody, that's going to be a little different, that's going to be a take on a time-honored formula, but be its own thing. This delivers all of that. Not to mention, it's shot in the exact same town and in the exact same wilderness where they shot First Blood, and same as William Brent. Just the exposition shots, the shots of the old mill decaying, the shots of the dam, water flowing, it's a gorgeous place to shoot a movie, as we already experienced, and they get the most out of that. But I just, Antlers is kind of a monster, and it's just kind of a monster movie in the end, right, where the monster doesn't really even cause that much chaos. It just does this awful, icky stuff. And I wasn't able to find the healing or anything at the end of the movie that the movie seemed to think it got. And right, that doesn't mean I don't like Cooper's attempt at this, but I think people will be turned off by it ultimately. I think mass horror audiences will be, and I think people looking for fun will be. And so I kind of don't know who this movie's for ultimately.
Okay.
Just me, but then I watched 40 of these, so that's not, I think you gotta hit something that hits better than that.
All right. Next up, we go into the world of Edgar Allan Poe, Mr. Creepy himself. This is 2022's. This is a Shudder original.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shudder. And it is Raven's Hollow.
Read the synopsis for Raven's Hollow, and I promise I'll be short on this one.
West Point cadet Edgar Allan Poe and 4 other cadets on a training exercise in upstate New York are drawn by a gruesome discovery in a forgotten community.
So, turn of the century, America, post-Civil War America, scarecrows, sort of high contrast, almost desaturated black and white photography. This thing had mood, despair, and it was really, really well done on a really, really cheap budget. William Moseley, who is the oldest brother in Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, amongst other things, does a pretty good job as Edgar Allan Poe, who really was a West Point cadet. Has some history here. But it's just too cheap and too stupid to work. And that sucks because you really do feel the passion behind this. When I read the synopsis, I was like, oh yes, I'm doing this. This is my kind of thing.
Yeah.
And as it was starting, I was like, okay. And then I was like, and that was basically the experience of this. But I don't want to rip on it too much because it does some cool things. It's got some creepy performances. It's also a monster movie. These wilderness movies usually are monster manifestation movies, and it just didn't get there. I feel bad. I really applaud the effort, but
I like that your review right there was the vocal version of when people do these spoiler-free emoji reviews where they just do and there you go. There you're done. All right. Next up is last one in Nature Doesn't Want You here is Paramount Plus 2022 Significant Other. And if these movies teach you anything, it's just don't go backpacking. Just don't do it. There's no reason to go backpacking.
What do you think you're going to see? The sights?
Yeah.
Eating granola?
Nothing good can come of it.
Horror star of the year, Maika Monroe stars in this alongside what's his name?
Jake Lacy.
Jake Lacy, who I most recently loved in the Jessica Chastain movie, Mrs. Something. It's a proper name. Yeah, it's about it's about a Washington lobbyist. It's a fantastic movie. Oh, okay. Basically, see Jessica Chastain things, and sometimes you get Jake Lacy for a bonus. Lacy's great as the fun, jokey boyfriend who really loves hiking the world, and that's his big thing. And Maika is the reluctant girlfriend who really doesn't want to do this, but does believe in this relationship enough that understands that this sort of taking the step with him is an important one. And they head out into the woods and they find themselves.
There you go.
And they're not really what they were looking for, as it turns out. And the reasons for that are crazy, stupid, and I can't get into them, but they're kind of delightfully so. This is an audacious concept for a movie, and there's lots of blood and guts and lots of what's going on, and the two actors are totally game. There's another movie coming up we'll talk about momentarily, I think, where they do the same kind of thing is on display and they do everything wrong. This movie does everything right. This idea is just bonkers, and it isn't going to change your life. But it came out, got really crappy reviews at first, and I watched it's because this movie's like 3 weeks old. I watched the reviews steadily climb as it found its audience into the 6.7, 7.2 range, which for a low budget horror movie like this is a really good range. That's a fairly safe bet.
Yeah.
So good job, Significant Other.
Well done. All right, let's move on to our next category. I like this one. It's some kind of disease.
I guess it's some kind of disease.
And the first one up is the movie. I don't have a sounder that could possibly match. I like
some sort of splatting sounder would probably be appropriate for these.
Right.
These diseases are not pleasant.
Well, yeah, very, very rarely are they.
No.
All right, so this one is the first one up is Son.
Which Joel, you can go ahead and play a little creepy kid for us if you'd like.
Oh, okay, yeah, I guess.
Not okay, creepy kid.
There you go.
It is not okay. Son is not okay. I thought it when I although I'll say this about Son, I thought it was a creepy kid movie going into it. So I was expecting something like The Twin or these other things we've talked about, and it isn't. That's a spoiler alert, I guess, because it really plays on that idea that it's a movie about a absurdly and more absurdly so overprotective mother who is going to extremes to protect her son from society once he contracts a very strange and outwardly damaging disease. And it's a road trip film, and it's really bloody. Okay. And it's really, really weird. And so there is a creepy kid, but he has a disease that's weird. There's lots of awful murders, as you can imagine. And there is this sense of what is real and what isn't. So this is like it's a total horror movie stew. But in the end, it really is the disease, which is a sort of vampirism that's at the heart of what is actually happening. And it's a little played pretty good. I don't recommend, if you're only going to watch 3 horror movies this year or next year, this shouldn't be one of them. But if you watch a bunch, this is different. I think it will impress you in some ways, even if it didn't completely win me over, but it was not what I thought at all. And some people don't like that. They don't like to be bait and switched, but I enjoy it very much. I like thinking, okay, here we go. The son. Yeah. What's it going to, with the mom holding the boy and the boy looking at the camera. Creepy.
Right.
It's quite a bit more than that.
Yeah.
For better or worse.
Okay. Well, next up in the disease du jour, we have Blood Red Sky. A woman with a mysterious illness is forced into action when a group of terrorists attempt to hijack a transatlantic overnight flight. That's a lot. That's a lot in that sentence. That sentence is doing some heavy lifting.
This movie's half in Russian, maybe, and half in English. I can't remember the language that it's German. It's German. It's Berlin to America is the flight, and the flight gets once the hijacking becomes reported, it gets diverted to Scotland. So it's actually a British-German co-production. Yay! I know you're really glad that I worked that out for you. But it's good to know it. There's like a dubbed version of it on Netflix. Half the movies in English anyway. I really strongly recommend you avoid the dubbed version and watch the German version, because the German version is only half German. It shouldn't bug you even if you don't like subtitles. Again, a woman and her kid. Woman's got something going on with her. I don't know what to say. The moral of the story is don't hijack a transatlantic flight that has an angry vampire on it.
There you go.
Because madness, bloody chaos, and insanity and murder will ensue. It's just going to happen. What do we say? That basically the zombies get in. This is the zombies already on the plane. You criminals just picked the wrong plane. I don't know what to say.
And here's the thing about vampires. Very rarely do they obey the keep your seatbelt sign. Keep your seatbelts on sign. They often will just ignore it. And if you don't know that when you're going to hijack a plane, then you know what? You deserve what's coming to you.
And here, this will be a litmus test for whether you can take this film. This film was super exciting. It's long, and it was just boom, boom, boom. It was always keeping things moving. I mean, it was. That's the fun of it, if you like that sort of paced thing. But here's a lesson too: if you think you got the diseased vampire type person licked, don't lock them in the pet hold of the plane.
There you go.
Because there are opportunities for that creature to revive themselves in there that you didn't really think about.
Right. Yeah, you didn't.
But it's fun. It's one of those, when you see the zombie movies where the people of the world have never heard of zombies. This is like a vampire movie. Ostensibly, it's not exactly a vampire movie. It's its own thing, but it's a vampire movie in a world where like Bram Stoker didn't exist. It's that sort of alternate reality. And as a hijacking procedural, it's like really well done, but it's crazy. It's a crazy movie, Blood Red Sky. So just be warned about that.
All right, let's move on to
crazy from beginning to end.
All right, next up is the next category is high concept equals high quality. And that starts with here we go. Voodoo.
To find out.
You mentioned voodoo, or as it's pronounced in some areas of the country, voodoo. Is 2022's The Immaculate Room, the second appearance by Emile Hirsch. No, we didn't talk about him in the other movie that he was in, but
what was he
is in this? Crap. You know what? I knew you were going to mention it. He was.
I want to know now. Oh, yeah, he was in Sun. He was in Sun.
Yeah, he's in Sun.
He's great in Sun, and he's great in The Immaculate Room. Emile Hirsch is a talented kid whose only crime was that his big blockbuster that they let him star in was Speed Racer, which he's great in, and which is awesome, by the way.
Yeah, don't get Ryan going on Speed Racer.
Don't even get me started on Speed Racer.
We already had our one tangent. We had our one tangent. We can only go. Now we go into.
It was a gift to you, and you denied it. How dare you?
All right, let's go to The Immaculate Room.
What's the tagline for this? The tagline's even better than the synopsis in this case.
One room, two people, $5 million. If you leave, you lose.
It's this perfect that was a nice combination of both taglines. I like that. It's Immaculate Room. It's just what it sounds like. It's this austere sort of antiseptic white room that they enter, where their food and whatever is provided for them, but basically they just have to live in there together, and they get $5 million if they. I don't remember how many days.
Yeah,
50 days. But the room wants to keep its money, and so it plays some mean tricks on them and puts them through the ringer in a lot of different ways, and it's not a conventional horror movie in that way, really, at all. As a matter of fact, it's a suspense movie, but it's a high concept suspense movie. So where do you put it? I don't know. This isn't a thing that exists, but it's a neat high concept that allows for a lot of dramatic tension and a lot of back and forth and a lot of, seeing people on all these different levels of this very closed capsule journey that these guys go on. And Kate Bosworth is the woman, and Kate Bosworth and Emile Hirsch are great. They're capable of really, really good things. The Indie Darlings, right? She was in that surfing movie, and he was in that dude who went out in the wilderness, Joel.
Yeah.
I can't remember the Sean Penn movie that was based on that book. Into the Wild?
Into the Wild, yeah.
it's fun seeing them in, starring in this thing together, and they really do great work together. But it's it's really good, because I used to call these like made for Sci-Fi Channel movies, but now that there's like Sharknadoes and stuff, it's like that's not fair to call anything that anymore. But it's indie, small, one set thing. It's a movie about ideas, and it's about the deconstruction of your psyche and of your relationship, and that maybe isn't super fun to watch, but for what it is pretty well done. I admired it, but I didn't love it.
All right. Let's move on to The Deep House.
The Deep House
on Paramount Plus. You can just check it there, or on Prime Video, it looks like. Yep. 2021 is a young and modern couple. That's not a good start. Not a good start. Synopsis.
Oh, you were in the wrong place if you wanted to be all modern.
Who go to France to explore an underwater house and share their findings on social media, undergoes a serious change of plan when the couple enters the interior of a strange house located at the bottom of a lake, and their presence awakens a dark spirit that haunts the house. I think Gordon 11 or whatever from episodes ago maybe wrote that synopsis.
Gordon, he's kind of repeating himself a little bit. He likes to hammer home the idea.
Does.
Yeah. I actually, when I put that into my software here, I completely rewrote that synopsis, which I don't usually like to do, but that one was just terrible. Yeah. Underwater haunted house. It's a great idea. I mean, that's a great idea. There's scuba kits. They're discovering this thing. The house, just simply because it's at the bottom of a lake, is already creepy as hell when they get there.
The poster's awesome.
Yeah, the poster's really, really great. The concept is neat. The setup is really great. And the whole movie's basically shot in a swimming pool underwater in this house set that they built. And it looks great, but it sucks. Everything they did in this, and it hurts me to say this, but they did everything wrong. If you were going to do a boo scare movie, it had to be a haunted house movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that's not hard. We've seen 8 million of them, but yours, the underwater is not enough. It has to be scary, and there's got to be a reason for it all that they care about. There's this one, and then I'll move on from this because don't watch this. Don't let the cool premise and the awesome trailer make you think this is good as bad. There's one scene where the guy gets possessed, and the movie's idea of what possession is to keep calling the woman, yes, my precious, yes, my most dearest. Like he's talking in this old 1920s villain voice. And it's just like, what? That's not scary. That's annoying. And it's gone on for 10 minutes. This is terrible. If he's possessed, and that's the worst thing maybe in it, is 9 other things that are equally unsatisfying and not scary that are just annoying. And it's a shame because there's a lot of film craft and some decent acting and a great idea. It's all here. The haunted house part, when we got to that, which is the whole last hour, you just laid a big turd in the foyer, and we're all just supposed to admire it. And I didn't. So Deep House.
All right, well, let's move on then to Anything for Jackson. Roku coming in. Roku channel making an appearance.
This is fantastic. Okay. Anything for Jackson.
Oh boy, it's good.
It's great. High concept, baby.
This is high concept. A bereaved Satanist couple kidnap a pregnant woman so they can use an ancient spell book to put their dead grandson's spirit into her unborn child, but end up summoning more than they bargained for. God, can't you just get the right spirit into the right baby?
Man. It's Sheila McCarthy and Julian Rikings are the couple. Julian is you don't know those names. I promise you, when you see these guys, you'll know them from everything for the last 40 years. They're fantastic actors. It's a small Canadian film, small Canadian neighborhood. They're this nice couple that if they're great neighbors, they're just the kind of people you would want. He's an OB/GYN doctor, and as part of that, he has been, without them knowing, auditioning young pregnant women to choose the perfect one to bring his lost son back into the world using this satanic ritual that they found in a book through their satanic book club like thing that they go to. They are the worst Satanists ever. They're the worst kidnappers ever. And yet they manage
they're not good at it.
They're really bad at both things.
Okay, just making sure.
But they, as a more accomplished Satanist who comes into the film at a later point, points out to them, like, I don't want to compliment you on your technique or anything, but you really did get the ball rolling on this. Like, this is happening here. It's anything for Jackson it's not again, this is a horror movie for horror people, but this really did something new and different. And there's a horror. And it's not like you laugh through the whole thing, even though it sounds comedic. That's the genius of it, is that all is funny by attrition as it builds throughout the thing. There's a scene where the head of the horror group is in the community center and they're all standing around, and she has to insist that they do the prayers to Satan and stuff before everybody starts eating the cookies and refreshments that one of the other members brought into the room. And it's that sort of take on the afterlife and demons and the devil that are so misguided and stupid. And yet that is part of our, if you got one of those friends who follows everything, every meme generator on Facebook that has the word witch in it, you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
The romanticizing of these sort of evil, awful things. And I get that the Salem witch trials didn't actually burn any witches. I get that. That was evil. But if they were witches, and if you're going to believe in that sort of thing and try and take it seriously, then, just sharing recipes maybe is not the whole story.
Right.
And this is brilliant. It's just brilliant the way they pull this off. This movie was amazing. It's dark, though. The girl who gets kidnapped, it's horrible what happens to her. And but I was so impressed with the filmmaking here. And I guess the filmmaking isn't even that special. Suburban Canada isn't special. That's the whole point. This is happening in this normal place. It's the storytelling that's kind of amazing. It really, really is a really cool high concept idea that they milk every bit of meaning and entertainment out of that as they can.
Oh my God.
Hats off to everybody.
Love it. Okay. All right. Let's move on to our next category. And that is, as we all know, War is Hell.
War is Hell.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it?
Indeed.
Burial, right?
Burial. Yep. Burial.
This is also a movie. It's just a few weeks old, but because it was video on demand, I was able to get it. I think this is also a Shudder exclusive now so I don't know how you watch it, but Burial is pretty good. Read the synopsis, I guess. That'll take care of a lot of work.
It does star Tom Felton, who we all know as Draco Malfoy.
Yep. In the news a lot lately.
Mm-hmm. A small group of Russian soldiers have the task of taking Hitler's discovered remains back to Stalin in Moscow. Wow.
And so where Hitler died in Moscow, there's a lot of woods and forests, and as we've learned already, they just shouldn't be there. Probably nobody should be anywhere near the corpse of Hitler.
Yeah, probably.
Like, there's a reason they dropped Osama bin Laden. They took a couple Polaroids, but they basically just dumped him at sea.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, just get this juju out of here, like the quickest, easiest way possible. Stalin, however, has gotten reports of this through the chain of command and wants to look his nemesis in the eye before he does whatever he's going to do to him. And so this little band, it's led by a woman, by she's like a quartermaster type officer in the Russian army. So why she's in charge, I'm not really sure. She's the highest ranking people there, but her charges don't take her very seriously. Felton comes into the film as one of the locals where they start to run into trouble. Because there's people in the woods, and it's a siege movie, and it's a really pretty good one. Pretty good military siege movie with a lot of creepy atmosphere, some very, very good actors. It's told like a demented bedtime story from actress Harriet Walter, who had to replace the late
Diana Rigg.
Rigg when she died. I won't say prematurely because Diana Rigg was super old, but when we lost Diana Rigg, Harriet came in, and Harriet's her voice whenever it comes in during the story. This is awesome, and it was good. I really liked it, but horror people probably are going to want something different out of this than you end up getting. And I think like action, sort of military action people really aren't much going to like this either, because there's certainly some of that, but it's not intense. What is this about? When you just really start to think about the evil of the war and post-war, trying to go on with your life, and just how Europe was just fundamentally, completely altered by those events. And these are just these random folks caught up in it. And that the legacy, even the legacy of Hitler, even just the legacy of his dead remains, like travels enough through time that we got to still be talking about it in the present day to tell this story from the past. I dug it. It's a weird, demented story. It's just not, it's not much of a horror movie. And even the horror elements that it teases I don't want to spoil it. They don't pay off in conventional horror ways. Horror fans aren't going to love it. And I think you have to be a real fan of like independent, on location, sort of low budget, character driven films. It's historical and very cool, but to really get into it. And I think if you're smart and really like art house films and dramas about people, this isn't going to quite fit the bill for that either. So it's hard. This movie was for me only. And it's hard to recommend it, even though I really, really dug it.
Yeah. All right. Let's move. Is that on your end? Is that on your end?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well,
I don't think I even have a phone that sounds like that anymore.
Oh. Well, they're insistent is what they are. But
should we answer it?
No, don't answer the phone. That's our next category. See what we did there? That was like a little play.
If you're in a horror movie, it's with some exceptions, it's probably best not to answer the creepy old phone.
Correct. And so in this case, it's kind of a creepy newish phone. And that is Mr. Harrigan's phone.
It takes place at the sort of birthplace of the smartphone.
Right.
Of the single panel smartphone. So it's not a historical thing. They're all using iPhones and stuff, but it's post BlackBerry, but yeah, you kind of following me. Yeah, based on Stephen King's story. Why don't you read the synopsis for it?
Sure. When Mr. Harrigan dies, Craig, the teen who befriended him and did odd jobs for him, puts his smartphone in his pocket before burial. When the lonely youth sends his dead friend a message, he is shocked to get a return text.
It sounds pretty Halloween-y, doesn't it? I mean, Stephen King, it's one of those coming of age child sort of weird old eccentric mentor stories. His oeuvre is full of those. Most notably probably Apt Pupil. Neither character is anywhere as dark as the two cats in Apt Pupil, but this structurally is very, very similar as to the journey it takes. It's a horror movie, but it's not for the whole family per se, but this really is one where the autumnal feel of it, the coming of age aspects of it, the dueling relationship that develops between the kid and Mr. Harrigan, played wonderfully by Donald Sutherland. You know, we're only going to have him for so much longer, and this, what a great role for him, and he's just fantastic in it. Doesn't add up to all that much. It's not gonna haunt your dreams, but it's also not going to live in your fond memories of moviedom either. But I thought Mr. Harrigan's Phone, it got a little dissed on for being neither here nor there as a horror movie, but I thought it was really, really pretty made. Directed by John Lee Hancock, who doesn't normally do horror movies. That is usually the purview of the aforementioned John D. Hancock, who we will never mix up on this show again, ever, even if they make the same kind of movies.
Even if they collaborate. Stephen King, it's free on Netflix right now. You could do a lot worse for your Halloween night film, truly, than Mr. Harrigan's Phone. You'd probably do better, but to do better is to take some risks. That's just the reality of this genre. This is a risk-free story that is pretty well executed, I have to say, from the people who brought you The Blind Side. Well, there you go. Wait, oh man, it's ringing again. Because it's not this must be like weirdly in the internet, because it's not your phone, it's not my phone.
Can't be my phone, although it sounds like it's in here with us.
Yeah, it's very strange. In this case, should we answer the phone? Answer the phone. That's our next category.
All right. Here we go. Whatever you say.
You know how Ryan was just saying, if you want really good, you got to take a risk. I really dug. This is one of the movies that I saw, and it is.
That's why we saved it for last.
Yep. The Black Phone
by pretty hip happening director. Scott Derrickson,
yeah.
Who in the horror genre previously brought us The Exorcism of Emily Rose and the incredibly gross and dark, not Insidious, but what was his horror movie with Ethan Hawke?
Give me a second here.
Damn. I should remember.
Is
I get Insidious and this mixed up. Sinister, and that's why, because they're really similar titles, but I know it's not Insidious, it's Sinister, which has since had a sequel, whatever. Sinister has one of the scariest horror sequences in it of all time, and it's like a flashback. You're watching the old movie sequence, and it's incredible, and Ethan Hawke's amazing in it. And Scott Derrickson, I guess he's more famous for making the first Doctor Strange film, and he's a big A-list Hollywood director now. He made the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still, which I'm fond of about 2/3 of that movie. I call it Keanu Barada Nikto. It's not bad. He's a good filmmaker. He makes things on a really big scale, and he can make them on a little scale too. And he gets horror, He really does get it. I mean, Exorcism of Emily Rose is a courtroom drama. It's got some horror in it because there's a possession in it, but that's all told in flashback. That movie is a court case about whether a priest, while trying to free this woman of a demon that possessed her, is guilty of homicide or not, because she died in the procedure. And it's a trial about those ideas. So he's a guy who's full of ideas, and he's got you can tell he's got lots of stuff in the closet in the horror genre he wants to try. This is not Derrickson's last horror movie. I feel like every other movie of his is going to be a horror movie. In fact, like he'll always come back to it. It's a story about like they don't really say, but I believe it's suburban Denver, like North Denver.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Area, and it's kind of the fall going into the winter, Halloween time, perfect for this time of year. And kids are disappearing, and life goes on. It's sort of like the horrors of our world. I always find that. It's because I'm watching the movie and I'm like, hey, you're a kid in a movie where kids are disappearing. Like, this is going to be a problem for you eventually. You should be doing things differently. Change your behavior. Do something. Don't get kidnapped and killed by the child killer person.
Right.
Right. But they don't, because they have, and to be in defense of these kids, they have a whole host of their own problems to deal with. And that when you're a kid, it's what's happened to me lately, really, that is the focus of everything you're going through. They're bullied. Their mom is gone. Their dad is awful, not dealing with it well, and it's horribly taking it out on them. Dad's played by Charles Manson lookalike, Jeremy something.
Jeremy Davies.
Jeremy Davies, really, really good actor, but Hollywood only has primarily one use for him, and he's pretty good in this film. Cast to type, unfortunately. I always like to see Jeremy doing something a little different because he's capable of that, but whatever. It's good use of him. He plays this guy. This guy could just be a monster, and he is, but he isn't enough that you can go on the journey with him a little bit, which the movie requires you to do. And the kids are fantastic, Joel. Right?
Oh my God, they're so good.
All of them, but especially the brother and sister at the heart of the thing.
Right.
Who?
Mason Thames playing Finney and Madeline McGraw.
Madeline's on a big famous TV show right now, so a lot of kids at least know her. I can't remember the name of the show.
Let me find it here.
She's great. And Derrickson just wrote this kid like this. It's like a fantasy character in a way. This kid's so sharp and smart and fearless, and all these things that when we watch a movie, we sort of wish we were. Yeah, she's profane and everything, but she's just awesome in the film. And of course, our hero, Mason Thames, he's really, really good too. I saw an interview with Derrickson when he was working on this, where they asked him, "Hey, what do you got to do to keep the kids, like in a healthy state of mind when you're basically locking them in a dungeon for 2 months?" And he's like, "You don't have to do anything. Kids love this. It's Halloween. It's time for kids. They know it's make believe, and as long as you're not being a dick, and it's only the child killer is when the cameras are rolling. They have fun doing it,
right?
And that's all you got to remember is these things are fun." He said he couldn't convince Ethan to go out for Sinister because he read it, and even though he liked it, it's just like, I don't do that sort of thing, man. I'm not interested in that. But he sold it on it. He's like, I don't want to live in that icky, horrible, awful place for a part of my life. Like, I choose projects primarily for what he's one of those guys who brings it all to it, and then he wants to take something from it that's new and different. And that's Ethan, for better or worse. He's one of them proofy, sort of artsy fartsy guys, which we love him for on the show anyway. But Derrickson's like, "Nah, man, it's going to be fun. It's going to be the most fun you ever had making a movie." And it turned out that even though Sinister it lives up to the name, it's awful. It was fun for them to do. And then when he sold him this, he's like, "Nah, dude, I already did that. I mean, I'd love to work with you again, but I don't know. He's like, "Here, just read it and get back to me." And he read it, and sure enough, next day he's like, "Yeah, you got me. When are we doing it?" Because the story of the thing, I don't mean to smile so much when I'm talking about child killer, very scary child killer,
very scary child
scary
killer.
in fast motion, scary in
the
slow
grabber.
motion, scary every second he's around. Just really terrifying in the way that he sort of is believable. He was supposed to be, all these years when Derrickson's been kicking this idea around in his head, he was supposed to be a clown. We've had kind of our fill of that lately. Maybe I guess maybe audiences haven't, but I feel like that would have weakened this somewhat. Because in the killer clown category, I think this would have been an also ran. It was Ethan Hawke's idea to make him a magician.
Yeah.
Good idea. That's collaboration, right?
Yeah. And kind of, and his look is sort of this creepy steampunky look as the magician character when he and then drives a van with the magician logo on the back of it with which he uses to abduct people. Want to see a magic trick? We only hear him say it once, but it's like, and there's so much that you don't see in this, but it's It all works. It's all so fantastically creepy. The way the Derrickson tells the story, and the way we get the stories of the other kids who have been kidnapped.
Yeah.
It's
the headline. The headline calls this guy. We are calling him the magician or whatever. The headline calls him the grabber. The grabber.
The grabber.
What awful. There's a scene where the Madeline is being interrogated by the cops in the prison. There's so many good things in this movie, but this might be my favorite scene in the whole thing. We're like, oh yeah, I knew because I'm the grabber. You effing fart knockers.
Yep.
She's saying this to the cops.
She's calling the cops on it. Yeah. Going, oh, you
think I'm the grabber. Arrest me.
I'm the grabber. Yeah.
It's so funny. And they're like, well, we just want to know. And eventually she's like, because I dream things and they become true. And then by that point, the cops are like, okay, forget it. But when the cops are befuddled and trying to figure things out, who do they turn to? You know, and they're 2/3 of the way through the movie. It didn't get the greatest reviews. It didn't get the greatest, action for a relatively large budget, big studio horror movie. I admit it's not the end all be all exactly, but everything that took place, I thought, and Joel, I recommended it to Joel because I knew there's some triggers in it for Joel for sure. Mm-hmm. But and I knew he'd have to try to overcome those. But it is a film about overcoming stuff in the end, it's demented and creepy and scary, but joyful in a way, and that I really appreciated. So,
and we've talked about this entire thing, and we've never mentioned the black phone. And in this case, I don't think we need
the name of the movie.
The name of the movie is it, and when you don't see, because again, it plays on that trope of when the phone, old school phone, is ringing, you don't answer it.
Nothing good can be on the other side of that phone.
We know that they're going to answer it, and it really does a great job of sort of subverting the trope of really, but yet also remaining creepy. I just really dug this film. It was a lot of fun. In that scary, that scary sort of way.
And a lot of it really did. Derrickson's great in that he really collaborates with people. And this was a small enough budget thing. Mm-hmm. He left Multiverse of Madness over creative differences right as it was getting ready to go. Mm-hmm. And just had this in his back pocket and wanted to just do something that was fun and collaborative and that didn't have $8 trillion at stake or suits hanging over his every creative decision. And it's full of that energy. And Hawk was a perfect. He's not perfectly cast in it per se, but all his choices and all the fun stuff is just. That's what an actor like that brings to the party, and the two of them together are kind of magical in a great way. So, and the kids, I can't stress this enough. The kids are fantastic.
The kids are, because the whole thing rests on them, and they're really, really good.
Yeah.
All right. So we in typical fashion, Ryan and I thought we could get through all of these films in one episode.
We're halfway through.
We're halfway through.
But hey, it's a pretty short episode, so maybe you won't mind another episode. Mm-hmm. 2 episodes in 1 week. That's a novel thing for the movie show with Joel and Ryan. It'll be a first.
So, all right. So we are going to sign off for right now, but we'll come back and you're going to get another episode, and it's going to be delightful.
Part 2. Look for it. 1 day from now, it'll be there, so you can keep right on going.
Yep, you can keep right on going, but we're gonna break this up just to give us a little chance to catch our breath, because we got a whole bunch of fun movies yet to come. So we will all the things, where to reach us: Facebook,
the Twitters,
all the stuff, the Twitters. We'll see you next time. See you in just a little bit, everybody.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.
Period.